So we just wanted to return to a conversation that started when we were at the Aiken Center discussing, we went over the syllabus for the online course, and a really great question came up about ways in which we are going to be interacting with students in the online forum in terms of feedback and when there's conflict or tension. And it started, we were about to begin when Margaret, who's also running the course together with us, said it's important to remember that your online posts are about your own personal growth. And we wanted to open that up and be more concrete and um, give some larger understandings about that, because we ran out of time in the room that day to be able to dig deeper into what the nuances of an online forum look like and how we can provide a little bit more structure so that it can be a space of learning and growth.
And I'll just add to that by saying that, at the end of our week-long residential that happened right here, we're actually sitting on the edge of Orchard Cove House, there were some conversations that came up about tending to relationships and the inevitable tension and messiness that arises when we're committed to being in a long-term learning community with each other. And so I think that what we want to share, I'm going to share a few of the thoughts that we've been writing down, but that's really our collective thoughts on this. And they respond not only to the online learning environment, but also to just the way in which we continue to try to put relationship forward as one of the central expressions of leadership that's at the core of this program. So that's a little context. And we just have a couple notes that I'm going to just run through that are our collective thoughts about this.
I think we should say that we spent some time earlier, all of us working on, to try to clarify for you what were the most important things that we wanted to communicate, and be really illuminate how it is that we're seeing not only how the program's laid out, our role in it, and our relationship with you through our roles.
Right.
Exactly.
So to start that off, what I think is really clear about this program is that what we're trying to offer is actually a framework for a relationship-centered leadership practice. It's not a specific tool or methodology for dealing with conflict resolution, although the practices that we've laid out over the course of our first week together are the framework that make up how we might be in relationship with each other across difference in meaningful ways. And we wanted to just remind you of that. So we're not necessarily just saying, like, there's going to be tension, go deal with it.
Messiness is going to happen. Get ready for it. So that's not the point.
That's not what we're saying.
So as a reminder, we talked about conscious communication, right? We talked about the process of inquiry with an open heart. We talked about the ladder of inference and how that can actually help us to communicate more deeply and fully with each other. We offered this framework around coaching that's not about fixing, solving, or offering advice. It's actually about holding space for our own discoveries and to be in relationship with each other in a different way. As a team, we're interested in holding space for love, for relationship, for learning, for well-being. We want these practices to inform how we engage with each other, but we're not necessarily intending to step in and be mediators in moments where tension arises, because we believe that that process of engaging in that tension is part of the muscles that we're building through conscious communication, through awareness practice and our ability to actually find center when we might feel like we're triggered or a little bit off, through the relationship protocol that we talked about, the asking of permission, the invitation, the making of offerings, the listening, through integration and accountability. So that's a practice that we've talked about. What are our core values and principles? Everybody had a chance to share that. How are we embodying that when we show up in relationship, when there's tension or misunderstanding or when we're missing each other? The invitation into agreements that invite us into a different way of being with each other, that invite us to engage with tension, to attend to and acknowledge impacts when they happen, to allow the learning to go but the stories to stay, to allow things to at times remain unfinished or not tied up, to expect and accept non-closure, right? So all of those agreements are also tools, practices that invite us into showing up differently. And we've very consciously chosen not to say, when tension arises, we're going to mediate and we're going to use this particular conflict mediation process, in part because a lot of those processes come out of very particular cultural contexts. And most of the time when we find ourselves in situations, everybody hasn't agreed to those dynamics. And we're interested in building our muscles to be in more complex relationship over time. And these are the practices that we're inviting us to collectively use as we all are part of this learning community, where we'll bump up against the differences that are present and the tensions that emerge from that.
And the we, when Matt refers to these things we're talking about and what it's going to be like on the online forum, the we includes Margaret.
Yes.
So even though Margaret is not physically here, she's been a part of all of these conversations and is fully aware and lives and embodies these practices with us too.
So the invitation is really to show up to these online forums, to your relationships, being willing to risk to gain, to actually engage in sometimes the places where it feels like there may be some discomfort, and to do it with an open heart.
And we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the next step with you.